Hello. Welcome, everyone, for another edition of Millie's Industry Monday. My name is Ali Emmerich, and I'm the Program Director of Arts Education at Barnard, and I'm joined with my colleague, Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm the theater coordinator for the Glicker Milstein Theater, and we're also joined by Hannah.
Hello, I'm a worker at the Glicker Milstein Theater, a student technician. I'm a senior at Barnard, and I'm majoring in English with concentrations in creative writing and theater.
And you've also done a bunch with the student clubs and the theater team.
I've done quite a lot with student theater on campus, yes.
Lots of directing and all sorts of things.
And you'll notice that, down below us here, we're joined by three other wonderful people. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves, starting with Kaylan.
Hey, everybody. My name is Kaylan Paisley. I'm a hair and makeup designer for Broadway, and I've done some time on the road as well.
Thank you. We also have Ian down here in the middle.
Hi there, Ian Carr, freelance sound engineer in New York City. Right before the pandemic, was on the Broadway production of the Lehman trilogy, subbed around the city a bunch before that on various shows, and prior to that, spent 9 years touring with different Broadway shows.
So my internet just died, so I'm guessing Ian just finished. I'm not sure if Michael went. Michael, if you didn't go, please introduce yourself.
I'll go. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Haidt. Currently, I'm the Associate General Manager of the musical The Lion King. I've been with Disney Theatrical Productions for 15 years. It's wild to think about, but during that time, I've done a host of different jobs, including being a production assistant, assistant company manager, and now Associate General Manager. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. And we are excited to have all three of you. And so I thought what we could do next is kind of tell your tour origin stories, since, the thing that you all have in common is that you have all been touring professionals. You have that experience on the road. And I know, Kaylan, last time you were with us, which was almost a full academic year ago, our students got to talk a little bit about being on the road with you. So I thought maybe each of you could just go through, tell your tour origin story, how you wound up going on tour, where it led you, what you learned along the way, who you met, whatever you want to talk about. Whoever wants to start can go right ahead.
I'll go first. Oh, wait, Michael, do you want to go? You're like, not it.
That was not it.
Not it. So I grew up in Nebraska, Omaha. My mother was a hairdresser, and I was obsessed with theater. So the two kind of blended together, and I found myself in an apprenticeship program in Omaha. And that led me to North Carolina School of the Arts, which is a fantastic BFA program. And I got my degree in Wig and Makeup Design for theater and film. And from there, I ended up on the road. So my first tour was Cats, which coming out of school really was the best jump into the world that I could have asked for, because it was all of the hair and makeup that you could imagine. And the School of the Arts was a great program, and they had a job fair. And because I was at the school, they put me into that job fair. And through that, I met the hiring person through Troika Entertainment, who gave me many, many jobs thereafter, and is somebody still that throws my name out, and I get random phone calls that, this person recommended you. So that was my time getting on the road.
Amazing. Who wants to go next?
I guess I'll hop in. I grew up just outside of Philadelphia in a town called Warminster, Pennsylvania, in Bucks County. After high school, I got my undergrad at DeSales University, just outside of Allentown. And while I was in my senior year, I just threw my resumes around to every regional theater, every touring company, you name it. And Troika Entertainment same company that Kaylan started with, reached out to me and said, hey, we have this position. We need an A2 for the second national tour of Legally Blonde, the musical. Are you interested?
For our audience?
I'm sorry?
Can you just define A2?
I'm sorry.
Define A2. Define A2.
A2, oh, great, sorry, yeah. Audio was a little jumpy there. A2 is the assistant sound person on the tour. So the A1 is the head of sound, the sound department, and the A2 is the assistant, who generally runs things backstage, while the A1 is the front of house person who mixes the show. So I did the Legally Blonde tour, which is where I met Kaylan, which turned into good things later on. As she is now my wife. We'll just cut to the chase. But yeah, from there, I ended up jumping from tour to tour to tour and spent 9 years on the road.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Michael, it's your turn.
So I grew up in a small town outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania, and moved to New York to get my undergrad at NYU, and then kicked around in New York City for a while after that and did a bunch of odd jobs, including I worked as the assistant producer to Ken Davenport on his off-Broadway musical, The Awesome 80s Prom, which was a hilarious time. I have some great stories about that. But shortly thereafter, I got a gig at Disney Theatrical Group as a production assistant. I recently posted to my social media the contract that I got sent, which was for $6.75 an hour, which was minimum wage back in those days. And worked my way up to being the assistant company manager of Lion King on Broadway. And I did that for 2.5 years. And at the end of that time, they offered me to either go set up the new production of The Lion King that was happening in Las Vegas, or to go out as the assistant company manager on the first national tour of Mary Poppins. And I thought, I'd heard about tours. I had certainly been familiar with people who had come in and off the road. And I just thought it sounded like an adventure. It sounded very romantic. It sounded like, just like a crazy, exciting way to live. And so I ended up choosing the Mary Poppins tour route, and I did that for a year and then went to the Lion King tour for ultimately 2 years. Subsequently to that, I came into the office before going out on tour again and did in 3 years Newsies, then Lion King, and then Aladdin for the Disney company. And that's my tour time.
Amazing. What fun. I think what we can dive into now is, I know Hannah has some questions ready for you guys. So let's dive right in, Hannah.
Yeah. So what Michael was just talking about this romantic notion of going on tour, I guess the first question that I want to ask is what is the actual reality of going on tour, the day-to-day, the year-to-year? As you were talking about being on tour for 9 years sounds overwhelming to even think about. Just what is the actual reality of the day-to-day like? And that is for anybody and everybody.
So I think I'll start by saying, when you start out your touring career, I think Michael had an easier start than some people. But usually you start on the smaller tours, what we call the second national tours, otherwise known as bus and truck tours. And you're playing, generally speaking, a lot of the time you're playing one city for one night. So you're loading in, you're getting the show set up, you're doing the show, you're putting it back in the truck, you're sleeping on the bus overnight, and then you start over and do the same thing the next day. But as the years go and you kind of get known and you prove yourself, you get to move up to these bigger tours where they sit in cities for anywhere from a week to a couple months, at which point the day-to-day lives are very different because you're not loading in every day. You're not in a new city every day. When you get to these bigger shows that sit down for a while, you get to experience the cities and some of the culture and whatnot. So it as far as the day-to-day, it depends on the show you're on, I think is a good way to start that conversation.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I will say they all have different problems. There are always problems. There's none of them that are just a walk in the park. Certainly I think Ian's point is 100% correct. When you're moving every day and doing a new show every night, you get into a routine in some ways, but also some days you end up in a cafetorium where the set won't fit. And, suddenly you're in a real crisis mode solving something like that. On the other end of the spectrum, when you have a gigantic musical, suddenly there's 120 people who all have problems. One person's problem ends up capturing the entire day because there's space available to fill an entire day worth of one person's major problems. And so, there would be times when The Lion King would start at 8 o'clock at night, and I would say, oh my God, do we still have to do the show? We survived the day, but there's still the show. So it really, and it runs everything in Kaylan, anything you'd
I
like to
will
add?
talk now. Sure. Yeah. I think one of the most unromantic things, and then like secretly one of the best parts of being on the road, are locals. So every time you go into a new city, you have a group of people that are local to the town that are typically union members that do this theater thing. And then sometimes they aren't trained at all. And everywhere I went, I usually picked up 2 locals with a varying range of skill. So depending on the show, every day, every week, whatever the sit down was, I was training a new group of people with how to do the job. And that, I mean, doing the same thing, isn't that like the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and expecting different results. Like, it's truly maddening some days because you're like, I swear I told you this, but maybe that was the last city. And like on those bus and truck one-nighter tours, it was a real challenge to get your show up and running and going. And by the time you get to running the show, you're like, wait, we still have to do this. I've already had a myriad of problems that haven't been solved. So it's definitely not easy, but it is part of the adventure. And some of the locals are some of my lifelong friends. So, and now that I'm not on the road, I miss seeing them because when we toured, it was like, I got to see them once a year. It was really pleasant.
I do want to also not just talk about the problems and say there, are, to Kaylan's point, real lifelong friendships, also like a tremendous amount of adventure outside of the theater as well.
Is that Michael's internet or mine?
I
think it might be Michael's.
Yeah.
Am I back?
Oh, you're back.
Oh, you're back.
To get to see that many places, to get to explore, in my first year on Lion King, we had some child performers who got to do Honolulu, Boston, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, and Philadelphia in the same set of 6 months. And that kind of education that you can get from seeing those cities, it's wild to compare to their colleagues in school.
Yeah, absolutely. Hannah, do you have some more questions that you want to ask?
Sure. Let me look at my list. Well, I guess you were just starting to touch on it on both fronts, but something I wanted to ask was like, what is your favorite thing and what is your least favorite thing about being on tour?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is definitely the food. Playing these like major cities, I've been to like, I would like dare to say like all of the best restaurants in the country. It's like my favorite thing, getting to experience the local cuisine, getting to experience the local people. That's definitely one of the best parts. I also feel like I know every major city in the country now. Ian and I have actually joked about, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to go on a honeymoon, and we've joked about, let's just like jump in the car and go on a grand road trip of all of our favorite cities and favorite food places, since that seems to be what's available now. One of my least favorite things is being away for all of the big stuff. Missing close friends' weddings, missing funerals, missing Christmas year after year after year. That it really takes its toll. It's really tough.
Ian or Michael, do you have favorites and least favorites?
I'll say the favorite for me is definitely, because I've only ever toured with Disney shows, the magic that I think a lot of people feel over having that little bit of the Disney company in their hometown. It lights people up and it really excites them. And I think, getting to be part of that, certainly in Lion King, where I would be front of house every night, you really get to experience the energy and the joy that it's bringing. It's bringing to everyone. The thing I'm gonna say the thing I like the least is sort of the how do I want to say this? There's a front of house drummer that I work with and have known for 10 years and have a great affection for. And one day after the show, he was packing up his drums, getting ready to load them out to the next city. And I asked him how he was doing, and he said, Michael, like, the job I do for free, you pay me a salary for this loading and unloading of the drums. You know, I just hate unpacking the drums and testing them all and recalibrating them to different atmospheres, and all of that is work. But playing the show, that's where the joy is. And I would say for me as well, there's all of the sort of what I call administrivia of, you know, packing the office up, you know, like packing like every single little cord that goes to your computer, you know, like trying to sort out the wireless system in the new city that you get to for the new company that runs the theater, like all of that, like, you know, it's a little bit of nonsense, but it's the death of a thousand cuts. And that, I think, can really wear on you.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of build on what Kaylan said. You know, I hated missing family things. I hated missing friends' weddings. That's the absolute worst. But because you're away for a lot of things, you bond with your crew and your company around you in a way that's in a lot of ways profoundly deeper than like common friends from home. And that's not to take any value away from any of that. But when you're on a show for 2 or 3 years and you spend 2 or 3 Christmases with people who aren't your family, they become your family. And there's just like this kind of war story side of it where like we've been through battle together. Oh, we made it through this load-in where, oh my God, do you remember that load-in where that piece of scenery almost fell on somebody? Oh my God. Like you have all these stories and all these situations with all these people. It's almost like coming back from war, you know, with all these stories, and you're just bonded with these people. And I think it doesn't take any value away from your other friendships or your family, but it's a different thing altogether that's very special.
Yeah. I guess a question I have as a follow-up to that, is there like a particular war story that you feel like really defined like how the touring experience went for you, that bonding with the other people, like a particular moment that really stands out in your head that you might tell over and over again?
I mean, as far as bonding goes, I met my husband and the guy who married us is Michael. So like, as far as like friends and family go, these are like my core. So that's my...
we can't beat that answer. We all worked on, Michael and I have done 2 tours together, but we were all in Newsies together. Michael, you're going to have to forgive me. Did you do the movie with us, or were you gone at that point?
I was gone at that point. I just stopped by to say hello.
You just stopped by to say hello. So we took the Newsies tour, and we filmed it. We digitally captured it, which is the version of Newsies that you can see on Disney Plus. And that was 2 weeks of utter insanity. And Kaylan's a very hard worker, but that week she put in the work. I also left in the middle of it to go to my best friend's wedding, and then came back. Like, it was just like crazy week. I go to Quebec City for a wedding, and I come back and I'm like, I had a good time. And Kaylan's like, I've been working 18-hour days for 2 weeks. How dare you? You know, but it's like, at the end of it, it was a crazy 2 weeks. And if you ever get a chance to see it on Disney Plus, it's truly a remarkable thing that we got to do, which had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, you know. So that was one that sticks out for me.
Can you share some of the high highs and low lows of that particular adventure? You can change the names, sir.
I won't say in specific, but just the way that the schedule worked out, we didn't get to go to the crew didn't get to go to the wrap party because we ended up loading out everything that night because we had to the show would come down at 10 or 11 and we loaded out through the night so we could catch our 7 a.m. flight to Oklahoma or wherever we were headed next. So we missed the wrap party, but
it was probably terrible for morale.
Oh yeah, it was awful. But that's what the schedule was, and we had to get it done. So that was probably a low point because we had put in. So I mean, you know, as much as I was gone for a couple of days for that wedding, we had put in so much work and so many hours. I mean, for the cities prior, we were having calls where the director of photography flew to wherever we were so he could relight the show for film, with the lighting designer from the production. So we were doing all these calls in all the cities prior to prep for it. We were having rehearsals because we were adding people into the cast for the filmed production. We were doing pre-recording sessions where we were recording the orchestra ahead of time for different cuts. And there was just a large amount of work for the really months leading up to it. So that was, but the product is there, and it was incredible to see our work on the big screen.
I have a high and a low about that experience. That was probably the craziest 2 weeks of my life ever. Typically in the television world, there is like a department head for hair and for makeup. And then that person, they deal with like producers, directors, they deal with designing the hair, all of that. And then the key takes care of like all of the paperwork and scheduling and all of that. So there's 2 people in each department that deal with all of that. And I was one person doing all 4 of those jobs. It was absolute insanity. So I was just exhausted all the time, but was also like so excited that we were filming the show that I had just spent the last 2 years of my life doing. So Cara Lindsay came back in to play Catherine, and they sent out a new wig for her, and we get the wig on her, and it's gorgeous. It's like the best. It was just like stunning, unbelievable. And Tom Schumacher, who is the president of Disney Theatrical, was roaming around the building, and he found his way into the hair room asking for a little bit of hairspray. And I was like, have a seat, Mr. Schumacher. Let me help you. And he looked up and he said, did we put film lace on that Catherine wig? And I said, no, we didn't, but it's, basic theatrical stuff. We cut it back pretty far. He was like, it just looks stunning. You've done a marvelous job. Ooh.
Sorry, that was right at your punchline. I was just, when you're done, can you go back and define those terms for our watchers?
Sure. Yeah, so Tom Schumacher told me that the wig looked great and I had done an amazing job, which was just like debatably the highlight of my career, because I was like, okay, sure. So wait, define what? Film lace and theatrical lace? Okay, so exactly. Theatrical, yeah. So lace front wigs. There's like a section along the front that all the hairs are like hand tied into. And the difference between film lace and theater lace is just a matter of consistency. Film lace feels like spider webs is the best description of it I can give. It tears if you look at it wrong. And theater lace is like sturdy and can withstand 8 shows a week and doing all the nonsense that we do in the theater. And then the worst part of that week for me was, so we did all of the 2 weeks during the day, we did all of these close-up shots. So, we were like super on top of our game, making sure that you couldn't see the lace, making sure that everybody's hair looked perfect. Super intense for the hair and makeup department. One person. So I also had 3 locals. I don't want to take all the credit, but so then at the end of the 2 weeks, we did a live run where they recorded everything, and we had never run that version of the show live from start to finish. We had done a stumble dress rehearsal, something, but we didn't have everything involved. And one of the characters, Bill Bateman, he introduces Meta in this moment, and he has this big silly mustache on. And we had never done the quick change before. And when Bill came off stage, I've never seen a man so sweaty in my life. But that mustache was not going on his face. And we kept sticking it and kept sticking it. And he's like, I have to go. I have to be out there. So in the movie, you can see that in one moment he has a mustache on because we shot that earlier in the week. And then from the live, he doesn't have a mustache on. So that sucked. But, it's live theater and that's what happens. But that comment from Tom, I mean, anytime I'm having a bad day, I just think about that. And it's like, oh yeah, I did all right.
So I'm gonna tag on to that, because I also have, though I was not involved in that really in any way, I also have a high and a low of the Newsies filming experience, which was my low point was due to a quirk in how the staffing of all of this happened. Kaylan, who replaced me as the associate general manager on Lion King, then also replaced me as general manager on the Newsies tour. So she was wearing double hats that I had used to wear. And the day that we were going to announce to the company that the filming was happening, we also had to call the agents for 4 of the principals who were not going to appear in that filmed version. But Caitlin was in the middle of mounting The Lion King at the Shanghai Park in Shanghai Disney. And she had to fly a bizarre round trip from Shanghai to London, back to Shanghai to pick up child performer, like young Nala, young Simba costumes, because that was the only way we could clear them through customs, was for her to fly overnight, Shanghai to London, and then back. So I got the joy of calling the agents on Newsies while I was the company manager of The Lion King sitting in Madison, Wisconsin. I was calling the agents of these performers to tell them, we have this exciting thing, but I'm sorry to tell you, your clients are not going to be part of it. Which I couldn't have felt further apart from all of my friends on the Newsies tour, and all of these people who I had, just such tremendous belief in and enjoyed their performances so much. To have to call them and say, I'm sorry, we're going to have to do this other thing, really broke my heart. But fast forward a few months, I was in San Diego with The Lion King, and they were filming the lovely Newsies event in Los Angeles. And so I drove down for an extended afternoon. And I have to tell you, standing at the back of the Pantages and seeing all of the work that everybody put into it. I mean, it was just so beautiful. I was moved to tears on a number of occasions. I think, Kaylan, I think I cried hugging you when I saw you.
We all cried a lot that week. It's okay.
It was so beautiful. And what a beautiful event.
That's so wonderful. I'm going to have to go and watch Newsies on Disney Plus now.
I was thinking the same thing, yeah.
Take away from this.
Mustache.
The mustache, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be looking out for it.
I do want to just also say that on the company manager side of the touring world, part of the responsibility of being in management sometimes means that you have to sort of distance yourself from the rest of the company, because they're you don't want the boss around all the time. Sometimes people just need to not have that energy. And emotionally, that can be a little sad to experience sometimes, even though it's right, it's best for everyone. But a counterpoint of joy that you get is when you are in a company management position and people really have horrible life events happen to them. They call you. And I have gotten to be by people's sides through some of the very, very worst things that have happened to them. And the bond that you get with people in a one-on-one way, there's nothing quite like it. And there's a joy, I think, in being there for people at 3 a.m. when the worst is happening. That is not, they don't tell you about that in advance, but to Kaylan and Ian's point, on the road, the people there are all that you have, and you getting to be there for others in that way is a really special memory that I will always cherish.
I can actually speak quite personally to that with an example of Michael. I got food poisoning when we were in Washington, D.C. It was, well, it was not cute. It was the middle of the show, and I lost it all over everything, everywhere. And I came out of the hair room bathroom, and there was Michael and our PSM, Jeff Norman, and they were like, what are we going to do? But Michael took me home in the Uber and put me back in my hotel room. And I'll never forget it. It was the care that you took of me was just so darling. And I just appreciate it so much. And you don't realize that that's going to happen, that your boss is going to be taking care of you because you can't run the show anymore because you ate some bad oysters. But it happens, and life happens while you're out there. So,
yeah. it's a very special bond that you build in those moments with people.
Yeah, that leads in really well to my next question, actually, this idea of like the things that you don't know were going to happen. I kind of have two questions that are too different to be the same question, but too similar to be asked as two different questions. And that is, what do you wish you had known about touring before embarking on your first tour? And what advice would you give a young person about to go on their first tour whenever it is that the tours start up again?
The advice I would give is pack light. You don't need that much. You think you're going to need everything and you just don't. I'm not sure about the second one.
I was hoping Michael would click in while I was thinking about it.
we were in a face off there for sure.
I know. If you got it, Michael, take it, because I'm having trouble finding the words. Advice. I probably said this when I spoke to you guys a few weeks ago, and I think Allie knows where I'm going. And I don't mean to offend, but my number one rule is don't be a dick. Be a nice person. That's, you may not be the best at your job, but be a nice person no matter what, because that means more than anything else. That's my biggest piece of advice. And something I wish that I had known, is that the right prompt? I wish I would have known how much it would have affected me missing all those weddings and funerals and things. It's nothing that I wasn't able to, emotionally conquer. But when you're away from home for, that first Christmas, it's like, oh.
I think advice I would give is it's worth, keeping a journal for those moments that, it is lovely to look back on the moments that I did and be able to just capture what I was thinking or feeling in a given instance. And there's a sort of meditative quality to keeping a journal, which I grew to enjoy over the time. What was the second one? I forget now already. Pandemic brain.
It was advice that you would give to somebody like about to embark on their first tour.
I see. What would I say? I would say, the work is hard, and to pace yourself, to really, pace yourself in the work. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And to pace yourself in your playtime as well. In your off time. Especially when you're new on the road. You have these are well-paying jobs. People can have more money than they've ever had before, and they can play really hard and get overwhelmed very fast by it. And so I think to the extent that you can find the inner fortitude to determine the boundaries that you need to take care of yourself first and your work second, and then just, take care of those things and then enjoy the adventure of being in a new place. But you got to take care of yourself and your work before you go a little whole hog on the other stuff. Am I saying that well, Kaylan, Ian?
Yes, yeah. I think so. I think I wish I would have known to take better care of myself, and understand that I don't know, your body has to be, you have to take care of your body and nurture your body in order to be able to keep going. I was on the road for all of my 20s, and we partied a lot and we had a really, really good time. But sometimes you start to pay for that. So just to take care of yourself and your mind. I think that's a big thing. Meditation is so huge and journaling is so smart. It can get really lonely on the road, which sounds so crazy because you're moving all the time and you're around all of these people. But I feel in the same way New York City is lonely, the road can be lonely. And to take care of your mind and body is just so crucial. And just to piggyback off what Ian was saying about not being a dick, it's just so you never know who's going to give you your next job. Ryan Murphy, the guy who booked my flights for my first tour, he like booked the flights out for me to get to Idaho Falls with cats. His husband was the GM on Anastasia, which was the first Broadway show I supervised. And like, that's how I got the job. And that was 10 years later. And there would have been no way for me to know that at the time, but they've been so good to me. And so, yeah, just be nice to everyone you come in contact with. We're all human beings and we're all just trying to get through this.
Can I ask a question? We've talked about some very responsible stuff. Can I ask you, like, the coolest party that you had in your time on tour? Like, you know, like at a particular venue or a particular, you know, like, I will say for me, we announced to the Lion King tour that the show was, that tour was going to close in 2017. And so for the remainder of the time that I was there in 2016, I just was like, let me see like how far I can push this to make this be as great of an experience as possible. And on New Year's Eve 2016, turning into 2017, we got the Cadillac Palace Theater to agree to let all of us stick around after our final performance on New Year's Eve for a champagne toast on the stage. And, you know, we had little hors d'oeuvres and we had champagne and we had non-alcoholic beverages for the kids. And, you know, we did the whole thing. And, you know, we paid for the crew to stick around extra and mop up afterwards and did the whole thing. And just all of us getting to stand there as a group and sort of say goodbye to this last year, that this tour that was out for 14 years at that point, you know, was a very special, meaningful moment for me. And I don't want everybody to walk away from this thinking there's only like the hard times in the theater.
Yeah, I'll say there's been Disney knows how to throw a party. That's one working for Disney. Disney knows how to throw a party. But I had this really great experience. I did the Rock of Ages second national tour, the Rock of Ages musical. And when we opened in Los Angeles, we had this giant party at Hard Rock Cafe right on Hollywood Boulevard. Quiet Riot was like the honored guest at the party. Jack Daniels was the sponsor of the party, and every company member got a bottle of Gentleman Jack whiskey with their name and the show logo engraved in it. And Food Network's Cupcake Wars was also the dessert that evening. And like the winner of Cupcake Wars that season presented rock and roll themed cupcakes at that party. And I got a hug from Cloris Leachman, who recently passed away that night as well. So that was a good one.
That's amazing.
I mean, we had some really good bus parties on Legally Blonde. The best part about being on a bus and truck is that you live on this tour bus and you live this like rock and roll lifestyle. And we partied hard and it was a ton of fun. It was like, you know, the front lounge with the TV and the bunks in the back and then the back lounge. We got into all sorts of trouble on that bus.
The problem was the bus was always stocked with beer and liquor. And even though the bars would close at 2, 3, or 4 a.m., the bus was always available to us.
The best party I was ever at, I was the supervisor on Priscilla Queen of the Desert, the tour. And when we opened in Los Angeles, it was just like an incredible party. It was a long time ago, and it was only like season 4 of RuPaul's Drag Race, but all of the drag queens from that TV show were there, and they were all everywhere. And they were like, "Oh my God, you do hair and makeup?" And I was like, oh. It was so exciting. It was so fun. And then I like drank and partied with them all night, and I was like, I'm living my truth. Like, this is incredible.
That is amazing. Okay.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you, Hannah. Sorry to step on your question.
No, thank you so much for that question. That's so much fun. Allie, Jess, do you have any questions that you want to ask?
I feel like you really hit all the main things I wanted to ask. I'm trying to remember what I've asked you each in your individual sessions with us the last semester and also this semester with Ian. But it was so exciting to get to hear about. I didn't actually realize, Michael, that you had officiated. So that's just another layer of how much this, like, in general, I think theater culture overlaps, and, you know, we all know each other from one thing or another. And I love, like, you know, Ian knows one of my old mentors. And I find that, you know, I love how connected the community is. So it's really exciting to get to talk to all of you at once.
Have you both in your time ever found people who were with you on one show doing one thing, came around in a very different way? I know, Kaylan, you shared that example. Anything like where somebody was, in the chorus and then later was, on the wardrobe team, or anything, any other instances of somebody like transitioning from one part of the theater to another part of the theater in your worlds? Fair if it's not. I'm just curious. No? Okay.
I mean, I have a couple of friends that have, Allie, she was a dancer singer and is now a stage manager. And then also Chelsea was a dancer singer and now a dresser. And it's just all about finding where you fit. Just because you don't make it on Broadway doesn't mean you're not good at your job and you don't fit somewhere. When we were on the road, there are some people that like live in the bus and truck world, right? And they're so good at it, but they don't want to move up the chain or don't move up the chain to the Disney style productions because they're meant to do those other jobs. And that doesn't mean that they're not good enough. You know what I mean? It's like our friend Chelsea, it's not that she's not a great singer and actress and all of that, but she makes her money dressing on Broadway and it's good money and it's a consistent job that she can depend on. So it's just all about knowing how to find where you fit and what makes your life the best, and realizing that that is success and not what social media would make you think it is.
Well said.
Yeah. I guess I had a couple last questions for these last 9 minutes. You guys have already touched on a lot of, I feel like, what are answers to this one, but I wanted to ask, because I went back and I was watching Ian's Industry Monday from a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about burnout a little bit in the industry. And definitely, I feel like a lot of what you're talking about is like, wanting to take care of yourself while you're on the road and have a good time, but also be able to take care of yourself. You've talked about meditation and journaling and having that kind of found family, but I'm wondering if there's anything else that you haven't talked about that were kind of strategies that you developed while on the road for like having the best possible time, whatever that meant for you.
I have a good one. Go ahead.
I would. When Kaylan and I were touring together, we got into a routine. And I think having a routine is very important because just the nature of our schedule, even though we were all on the same tour, Monday and Tuesday when we were loading into a new city, I really didn't see Kaylan until we got through the show Tuesday night, honestly. And even like just our sleeping schedules were different, but no matter what, no matter how sore, no matter how tired we were, we had breakfast. We went out to breakfast every Wednesday morning. And that was like the immediate, we just got through. So you have to understand, we have a term called schmooze day, because what happens is you do your 5-show weekend, you do Friday night to Saturday to Sunday. And then if you're moving to a new city, you load out the show overnight Sunday into Monday, get on a flight or get on your bus, go to the next city. And then usually Monday night, you start loading in. Then you come back at 5 or 6 a.m. Tuesday morning, work through the day, and then do a show Tuesday night. So it's kind of like one long Sunday, Monday, Tuesday all together. So we call it schmooze day. So schmooze day can be very painful. It can be very tiring. It can be very emotionally draining. We had a routine. Get through the schmooze day. We would have breakfast Wednesday, be lazy the rest of the day, do the show Wednesday night, and then Thursday and Friday, if we didn't have rehearsal or anything else, go walk, go find something to do. Stay away from the theater if you don't have to be there. It's as much as you have to have a routine at work, you have to have a routine to do non-work things while you're on tour as well.
I think that burnout is a huge problem in our industry. I know that through this pandemic, everybody's been talking about how much we worked. And Ian and I have been talking a lot about how much we used to do. And I'm like, I can barely get to a dentist appointment. And back in the day, I don't know how I did 2 shows and went to the gym. I don't know how I did all of it. So I think burnout is such a huge problem. And when you're on the road, the mundane day-to-day crap that you're dealing with gets so old. Like the flight attendant telling you to take your headphones out when you're like asleep. It's like, leave me alone. And that stuff really starts to weigh on you and you start to get really jaded. It happens so quickly, and you're making all of this money, and you are, traveling around the country, and you're like, I need these things to survive, and I'm not getting them. And you start to get really angry and really jaded. So my thing to combat that was always to find a point in the show that I could watch that reminded me why I was doing what I was doing. So it's, you look out and you're like, this is the magic, right? This is why we're here. So it was just finding that and reminding yourself, because it's really easy to be like, they got my Starbucks order wrong. I haven't slept in days. There's nothing to eat around here. The locals don't know what they're doing. Blah! But then you go watch Once and For All in Newsies and you're like, we're making magic. So it's just like finding that balance.
And I'll say, for me, it really was about finding, making the one promise to myself about a given city that I would do, even if it was just to walk and see a building that I'd seen on Instagram or something like that. Making a promise to myself that I'm going to prioritize something that's exciting to me in this city to do. And, like I said, it can be super small. It can be huge and gigantic and a multi-day event, but reminding yourself that there's fun inside the theater and also outside the theater to feed your spirit as as a performer, as an artist, technician, as an artist, as even a manager, to fuel yourself to keep it going.
Yeah, definitely. All of those sound like really good strategies. And I think the last thing that I wanted to ask was just, were any of you on tour in March last year when everything shut down? Okay, no. So I guess I'm just curious about what you were just talking about, this, Kaylan, of the idea of how did I used to do everything that I used to do? I know I've been feeling that way of I used to take 5 classes and I was in rehearsal every night or working at the GMT every night, and now I'm taking 3 classes and I can't stay awake. I'm curious if you would ever go on tour again after this, and what that might look like in a post-COVID world, if you would.
I would go on tour in a second, but Ian would have to go with me. And that might be a little harder to make happen. We've built a really nice life for ourselves here in New York, and it would be hard to leave. The best reason to go out onto the road is to make money and to save money. And living in New York and living through a pandemic in New York makes you appreciate money a whole lot. I don't know what touring is going to look like in this post-COVID world. I don't know what Broadway is going to look like. I don't know what any theater is going to look like. It scares me, and I'm hopeful that it's bigger and better than ever. I think about the Roaring 20s being the birth of Broadway, and I'm hopeful that we'll be reliving that. I just don't know. I don't know what any of it means yet, and it is so terrifying to think about. But it's gonna be a new normal, and it's gonna be a new thing, and I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Yeah, would I go on the road again? If you were to ask me right now, probably not, because I love our New York life. I love what we've built. But if the right project came along and Kaylan and I got to go as a package deal, and if Michael were to call us and say, I'm producing this show, let's go do it, we'd probably go and do it. There are just some people and some projects, even if you haven't read the script yet, you just know, oh, I got to do this, and it's, as much as I say right now, I'm done touring. Every person who's toured, in the back of their head, there's probably a number that comes with a paycheck, and there's probably a certain show that makes you reconsider that. So as much as road people, they say they're done touring, they can never actually truly say that.
My boss has actually already told me that I will go and reopen the Lion King tour for X number of weeks. So I know I'm going to find myself somewhere, because he is going to go and open the Paris production of Lion King. So I understand. I will go wherever I have to go. But I am, I too am a person who loves my city life now and would be hard pressed to leave it. And also, you know, once you have the taste of it, it never really leaves you. You know,
there's just this world where there's like this little part of me that somebody calls and says, "Hey, we're doing Newsies again," and probably all three of us would be like, "Okay, let's go." Right, let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I sweep the floors? What do I need to do? You know?
I guess that actually, just to interject, I know we're at time, but I just wanted to then ask: is Newsies the show? Is that the show that would bring you back on tour? Or is there another show that is?
You have to consider all the circumstances, but I'm pretty confident, and speaking for all three of us, is that show is very special to all of us. Kaylan and I met on Legally Blonde, but we fell in love on Newsies, and Michael was a big part of that for us as well. And you know, Michael literally performed our wedding ceremony for us. So it's not to say that naturally pulls us out of retirement, but that show will always have a special place to all three of us. And I'm confident in saying that on behalf of both of them.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I wouldn't want to do Newsies again because I like the first time was so good. I like Beauty and the Beast is like my heart and soul. It was like the first Broadway show I saw. So, and I've never gotten a chance to do it. So if that was going, I mean, if I wasn't working on it on Broadway, I would like tackle people to do it on the road.
Actually, I think because I've gotten to mix a lot of Mencken shows, and Beauty and the Beast is on my list to do. So that's a good point. Beauty and the Beast is something I'd have to think real hard about if it was offered my way.
I mean, really, all you'd have to tell me were that Kaylan and Ian were going, and I would sign up for whatever it is.
Thank you all so much. This was so wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So you can see you build lasting friendships on tour, as have been clearly demonstrated by these three. We're so happy that you guys joined us. Next week, we will have Charisse Green joining us. She is an actor, director, and writer. So join us on Monday at the same time, 6 o'clock, and make sure to ask us questions. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.